I gave my boyfriend an ultimatum that he has to marry me, but now I'm starting to regret it. We're both around 30. About 6 months ago, we moved in together after finishing grad school and relocating for work. We've been together for 4 years, and honestly, living together has been smooth sailing. We're happy, we want the same things in life, and we get along really well. The problem is, I've known for a long time that he's the one. I want to spend my life with him, settle down, and start a family soon. I've had a serious relationship before, also 4 years long, so I know what I need from a partner. But my boyfriend is just not in the same headspace as me. First, he was a late bloomer in relationships. I'm his first real girlfriend. Second, he struggles with decision-making about everything, from career choices to picking sneakers. When we talk about the future, I tell him I'm ready to settle down now. He says he loves me, everything between us is great, but he still wants more time to see where things go. Sometimes he even jokes that he hasn't had enough adventures with the opposite team yet. Last year, we had serious conversations about where to live after graduation. I told him I wouldn't move to a new city with him unless we were engaged. He didn't propose, and I stood my ground. By sheer luck, we both ended up finding jobs in the same city across the country, so we moved there together and rented an apartment. But lately, this has become the main source of stress in my life. It's now the biggest sticking point in our relationship. So in September 2017, I told him that when our lease ends in April 2018, I'll move out if we're not engaged. He's never been able to make a decision without a deadline, and I thought this would finally push him forward. Now I'm scared he won't propose at all, especially since he's openly said he doesn't plan to, and I regret giving him the ultimatum. I keep thinking I may have messed up something good by trying to speed things along, but at the same time, it's been 4 years. I also worry that if he does propose, it'll be just because of the ultimatum and he'll always resent it. On the other hand, when I gave him a similar ultimatum last year during the job search, he made it pretty clear he'd rather move to another city, likely ending things with me, than get engaged. I want to believe I'm being rational, but am I just being desperate and silly? If he doesn't propose by April, should I stick to my word and move out, basically throwing away a great relationship just because it's not moving at my pace? I'm open to answering questions. This situation is getting too stressful, and I'd really appreciate advice from anyone willing to read this. My boyfriend admitted that I gave him an ultimatum, and I tried to use that as a starting point for a serious talk about what he sees in our future. We sat down a few times to discuss it, but the conversations went nowhere, and he eventually told me not to bring it up again. So I stopped. For a while, things were good again, but I kept thinking about the ultimatum. Part of me hoped he was secretly planning a proposal to surprise me. Nope. Now there are only 10 days left before my March 31st deadline. I'm 100% committed to sticking to it. And just yesterday, he told me he wants me to visit his parents in September. After that visit, he said he'd talk to them about us and maybe think about proposing in December. Part of me is furious and insulted by this. First off, I've already met his parents and spent plenty of time with them. We get along fine. They live in a pretty remote state that's hard to reach. Flights are expensive and driving would take 2 days. I've suggested visiting them multiple times before, and we always had the chance, but my boyfriend kept saying no for one reason or another. The most frustrating part? We actually had a vacation planned for last week. We knew about it months in advance and could have organized everything. He vaguely mentioned he might invite me to see his parents, but never confirmed. I even checked flight prices back when they were reasonable and tried to make it work, but when I showed him options, he brushed it off with, "Not now, too busy." Then, less than 3 weeks before the trip, he suddenly announced that I had to come visit his family, otherwise there would be no proposal. By then, all the flights I had been tracking skyrocketed in price, and it would have been a massive financial hit for me. Honestly, that was a pretty clown move on his part. He waited until the last minute and made it an obligation, instead of just planning it properly when I first suggested. So I decided not to go. Now he's saying he can't propose because I didn't visit his family home, but I've already met them multiple times. Our families know each other. He insists his parents wouldn't approve of our marriage without that visit. If he had told me this before ticket prices spiked, it would have been no problem. We've had plenty of opportunities since the ultimatum to make the trip. It really feels like he set me up to fail, so he could later use it as an excuse for not proposing. For context, he's Asian American, born in the US, and I'm white. I asked if this whole "you must visit my parents first" thing was cultural. His answer was basically, maybe. I don't want to ignore their culture. So if anyone has insights about that, please share. Now that there are only 10 days left and he knows I'm serious, he's begging me not to go through with the ultimatum, but he still refuses to propose. He says it's illogical because he would have proposed in December, but he's willing to risk losing me just to avoid doing it in April. I get his logic. If we both want to get married, does it really matter if it's April or December? But I can't live like this anymore. He's a grown man and I feel insulted that he's blaming everything on me not being welcomed into his parents' house again. Meanwhile, his parents constantly ask him about his plans with me. They don't know about the ultimatum, and honestly, I think they're just as curious as I am. What's the real outlook for our relationship? I doubt his family actually said, "Don't propose until she visits us." That sounds more like something he made up. Any advice or perspective would mean a lot. I couldn't follow through with my ultimatum. I was ready to move out. I even found a new apartment and wrote a deposit check. But at the very last moment, I just couldn't picture my life without him. I told myself I loved him too much to walk away just because of a deadline I created. I also believed him when he said he meant to propose in December. After 4.5 years together, breaking up just because I didn't want to wait a few more months felt foolish. As a compromise, he agreed we could finally get a cat, something I'd wanted for years, but he resisted, and that he'd attend at least one family event with me that year. On March 31st, the very day I was supposed to move out, we adopted a cat together. Life was good again. We almost never brought up the ultimatum. Both of us needed time to recover. I started therapy, focused on self-care, picked up running, made new friends, invested more in my career, and adored my amazing cat. Focusing on myself probably lifted some of the pressure off him. There were several family events during this time, but he always had excuses for why he couldn't go. Maybe it didn't matter. By late summer, things felt normal again, almost like the ultimatum had never happened. The only recurring issue was him constantly complaining about the cat. As promised, I visited his parents with him in September. Like I mentioned before, he's Chinese American and I'm white, so I brushed up on some Chinese to at least understand a little and participate when his family spoke together. The trip was great. I enjoyed spending time with his parents and liked his hometown. I left a few days earlier than him so he could stay longer, talk with them, and maybe discuss our future. When I asked him afterward how it went, he told me his parents were happy for us, but that a December engagement would still be too soon. That sounded completely absurd to me. It felt like he was just projecting his own hesitation onto his parents. He also said I needed to learn Chinese before we could get married. His parents speak English perfectly well, but within the family they prefer Chinese. So I started studying the language. By November, I started to get anxious again. He slipped back into his usual excuses. One time he casually mentioned he couldn't propose in December because we need to save money, but we share finances, both have stable jobs, and money isn't an issue. Another time he freaked out about my student loans, even though in my field, loans are standard, and I have a good salary with automatic payments set up. He even demanded to see a full spreadsheet of my finances before he could consider our future. Luckily I had one ready, so I showed him and that calmed him down. Meanwhile, my friends and family started asking wedding questions. I know they meant well, but it made me even more stressed because I feared the wedding would never actually happen. I worked with my therapist on letting go of that stress, deflecting questions, and creating strict rules for myself. No nagging, no hints, no wedding talk, nothing. I already avoided those things after the ultimatum, but I doubled down. We spent Christmas together for the first time, and I was convinced he'd propose. He didn't. I didn't complain or pout. For New Year's, he went to his family while I stayed in our city for work. Again, nothing happened. I finally had to face it. He didn't keep his word, even though I kept mine. I was the perfect girlfriend he asked me to be, using this as a chance to grow personally and in our relationship. But nothing changed. I clung so tightly to my no pressure rule that I started treating my own thoughts about marriage as shameful. Anytime I thought about wanting to marry him, I'd feel self-loathing, like those were bad thoughts I wasn't allowed to have. I realized I was actually ashamed of my own dreams for the future, and that's awful. But in the past few weeks, a few things snapped me awake. First, one of my managers offered me amazing long-term career opportunities if I stayed in my company. But my boyfriend wants to leave this city because he hates it here, even though I'm fine. On top of that, he flat out refuses to ever move to my home state just because my family lives there and they annoy him. That made me think, wow, this guy puts endless restrictions on my life but can't commit to me in return. Second, I went to my best friend's baby shower last weekend. I helped her and her husband set up the nursery, and it hit me hard. I want kids. That's the main reason marriage feels urgent for me. My biological clock is ticking. And in that moment, I realized it's completely normal to want marriage and children. There's nothing shameful about it. Right now, it's not just my dreams being smothered. He's blocking everything. Marriage, staying in the city where I have career prospects, moving to my home state near family. And somehow, I've even started shaming myself for wanting things he doesn't want. So I'm starting to plan my next steps, because honestly, this dude is taking more from my life than he's giving. Any advice on how to move forward would mean a lot. I know plenty of you told me back in March that I should have left already. You were right, and I completely own that. Thanks for reading. Last night I finally talked to my boyfriend about everything. I asked him what was really holding him back and how he saw our relationship. He said his parents think things are moving too fast and then listed some issues he personally has with me. We don't make decisions together. For example, I want to stay in our city for career opportunities even though he wants to move next year. Or sometimes I'll schedule plans with friends on weekends when he's free instead of waiting for us to plan together. He doesn't like that I get Amazon packages without him knowing what I'm buying. I showed him my order history. It's basically household stuff we both use and occasionally something for my hobbies, like $20 a month. I pay it off myself every cycle, so I don't see why every tiny purchase needs a committee meeting. He's bothered that I'm always 5 minutes late. Fair enough, that one's on me. He made a point to say none of this has to do with cultural differences or the fact that we're an interracial couple. But then he flat out said he's not ready for marriage. I was furious. I told him I wish he'd said that a year ago so I could have moved on. Instead, he basically strung me along for another year to buy himself time to decide if he was ready. I told him the relationship was over. He looked shocked. Now he's trying to act extra sweet, probably hoping I'll change my mind, but I'm done. That's the end of this story. I honestly think I did the right thing. The only thing I should have done differently was leave the moment I gave the ultimatum. On the other hand, at least now I'll never torture myself with what ifs. Why is her desire to get married considered normal, but his unwillingness isn't given the same weight? Sure, she could break up with him, but trying to force him with an ultimatum is kind of absurd. From the start, he said he wanted marriage and 2/3 kids. Over the last year or two, he occasionally said he wanted that with her, but more recently he's been saying things like, "I can't marry you," especially when she does something he dislikes, like, for example, if she farts near him. Sometimes she calls him out on it, and he claims it's a joke. But yeah, in theory, they want the same things. The issue seems like a mental block on his side, stopping him from actually taking steps to make it happen. The constantly changing timelines and endless hoops he makes her jump through show he's procrastinating. When she asks why, he throws out excuses about family, money, student loans, etc. Either those are the real reasons or he's hiding something else. I think the author has far more going on than just being hard to listen to. She probably has a bunch of personal issues she hasn't shared, and that's okay. I'm just saying, without knowing both sides fully, I wouldn't call her boyfriend a jerk. Of course, the author has flaws. Many have already been pointed out in the comments. And of course, no one is entirely good or entirely bad. I think the main thing she realizes now is that she's outgrown this relationship. People who fear commitment equally fear breakups and marriage. They freeze when faced with any serious decision. No growth happens, and their partner ends up feeling not good enough, even when they really are. Oh God, that's literally my boyfriend. I'm going to talk to him tonight, and I know he'll be just as upset at the thought of breaking up as he is at the idea of getting married. Check out our previous posts, which you can find right here. Don't forget to follow the thread if for some weird reason you haven't yet. Good luck out there.